Thomas Pidcock, please pop your delusional bubble. This is not going to happen, and you need to work for your leader. Unlike last year, should we talk about Netflix? Well, Tour de France, Netflix Unchained, whatever it's called.
Go on, you've written an article about it, so you know more than Patrick and me.
Okay, so I was lucky enough to watch Tour de France Unchained Season 2 a week early.
Who wins?
Jonas Vingegaard. But you can read my full review on cyclist.co.uk. There I give the juicy details, a lot of quotes. I wrote like maybe 10 pages of notebook pages on of quotes from the series. There are some zingers. This is a much better series than the last, I will give you that. It tells the story of the GC far better. Of course, that's because we have access to Vingegaard and Pogacar, which we didn't really have in Season 1. Vingegaard was in Season 1, but it was in this kind of awkward situation because he wasn't meant to be one of the featured riders, and he just kind of like jumped in halfway through. And everything was kind of recorded after the tour, so it's a bit sort of awkward because he knew what was happening. But then this year it felt a lot more sort of organic, and you had all the big different characters up there. Adam Yates isn't really touched on. He has a bit of a sort of spotlight in stage 1 when he wins that stage, but he isn't really spoken about for the rest of the show, which is a bit of a shame. I feel like he was a bit untapped in terms of the narrative there. But I'm alluding to Ineos Grenadiers with my previous point. Ineos Grenadiers, in an episode titled "The Enemy Within," it documents this big sort of battle between Tom Pidcock and Carlos Rodriguez. Pidcock is, to quote myself, I say that Pidcock doesn't always come across as pleasant. Often his bluntness appears brash, abrasive, and at some points braggadocious. He is sort of, there are some things he does. At one point, he's confronted by team staff because he's not working for Rodriguez, and the GC plans aren't working out. Once asked if he would work for Rodriguez, he says, "I'm not sure. Can you turn the cameras off?" To which the scene ends. And then later on as well, he completely ignores team orders on the Grand Colombier and attacks Carlos Rodriguez, which meant that he shed crucial time. At this point, Rodriguez was not far off the podium. And then the day after that, he's sort of saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to attack on a descent and try to go for the stage win." And that stage was actually won by Rodriguez, whilst Pidcock ended up losing a lot of time on that stage. Rod Denningworth described Pidcock as having a ruthless winning streak. There was also, interesting episode, episode 6, which is all about, it's called Dominance. It's all about Jonas Vingegaard's time trial performance on stage 16 and the Col de la Loze on stage 17. It does replicate the tenseness beforehand. We didn't really know how it was going to go. People are saying, Pogacar's is going to gain 30 seconds. People are saying Vingegaard's going to gain 30 seconds. Then we see the rides. And afterwards, there's this quite bitter tone, I think, that the episode goes into, where it sort of alludes to scandal and doping and controversy. And a lot of the French riders have something to say about this. Valentin Madouas of Groupama Français des Jeux says there is no truth in cycling in response to it. He also pulls a face as well before when he reacts to the news that Vingegaard won by 1.5 minutes. Similarly, Marc Madiot of Groupama Français des Jeux as well. He said, "There are undoubtedly still some cheats in cycling. That's human nature." And also Thibaut Pinot as well gave a pretty sort of cold response when asked about doping. The episode ends with a new villain, Richard Plugger, who enters the series. Richard Plugger, who says, quote, "There's a lot of attention on Jonas, so he tries to divert the attention from it to distract a little bit from the riders to something else." It's a bit of a broken sort of quote, but that's how he said it in the show. And what he is referring to is Beergate. This is documented well. The final episode, episode 8, where you see the feud between Richard Plugger and Marc Madiot. This is because Richard Plugger sort of created a media storm in L'Equipe. The day after Jonas Vingegaard's crazy time trial, he was worried about all the allegations against Jonas, so he decided to hit at Marc Madiot by saying that Groupama Français des Jeux were drinking poison, that referring to beer, on the rest days. And Marc Madiot does not take to this very well, not at all. Marc Madiot says that he did it, Plugger did it for the polémique, to create a scandal within the sort of media circus of the Tour de France. And Marc Madiot definitely takes this to heart for the rest of the episode. You can see him sort of jokingly drinking beer at the dinner table for the rest of the Tour de France. They cheers Richard Plugge. And I mean, the Jumbo staff don't seem too happy about it either. The Jumbo fans are booed as they go through Virage Pinot, the special Thibaut Pinot corner, which, by the way, you see on the show, you see his brother and his family all on that corner. That was quite a big bit of the episode that focuses on the Thibaut Pinot corner. But as the Jumbo car goes through, people are throwing beer, they're booing, they're throwing stuff, they're spitting at the car, and the Jumbo fans go, "Thank you, Richard." So you could tell that everyone was a bit frustrated with what Richard Plugge said. Marc Madouas even said that he took them for clowns. Also, on the briefing before that 20th stage, Marc Madouas sort of released his frustration, saying, when your legs are to ache, they'll ache even more when you think about those assholes and what he, Richard Plugge, said about you. Which, I mean, was a pretty sort of damning quote for him to give. However, Marc Madouas has the last say in the whole show. Spoiler alert. Episode 8 of the series ends with the following quotes. "I want to show Richard Plugge that real cycling is about men, the effort, the goosebumps, connecting with those around you. Yes, he won, Richard Plugge and Jonas, but winning isn't necessarily the most important part. Pinot, without trying, conveyed something else. He ended with the public's love." And I think that just encapsulates the drama, the energy, and sort of the joie de vivre it captured in Tour de France Unchained Season 2. There we go, debate.
Why is there only 8 episodes?
There were 8 episodes in the first one.
Oh, okay.
They're all about 45 minutes long. The shortest one is 38 minutes long. It's actually, I would say, the most powerful one. It's called For Gino. It traces Matej Mohoric and Pello Bilbao's quest for a stage win for Gino Mader. And Gino Mader as a theme and as a character does appear posthumously as well, I guess. The whole series begins in the first episode with a very personal sort of sequence. Ben O'Connor is out at a training ride and he gets informed about the news that Gino Mader has died. And O'Connor and Mader were close. They were former teammates as well back in NTT and Dimension Data days. And O'Connor just it really hits him. It felt almost too personal, too invasive that we were seeing him find out about the loss of one of his friends. And you kind of go around the peloton later into that episode and you hear what everyone's thinking. And there was this great quote as well from Mohoric at the end of the episode in honor of Gino Mader saying, "I hope he's proud looking down from the sky," that in response to Pello Bilbao's stage win. And you could sort of say, you can tell that the team wanted that, they needed that. It had not been an easy task for them to get into the Tour de France. Pello Bilbao and Gino Mader rode very closely for a couple of years beforehand as well. They were good friends, and Pello sort of says that he had that extra motivation, and they could hear his scream back home in the Basque Country when he crossed the line. It just that was that great exaltation of joy, but also of grief. I think the show really sort of handles this difficult topic of grief within the peloton very, very well.
How's the Jonas versus Poggy thing? Is that kind of shown as more of a good right, like the rivalry and the grandiose? Is it shown quite well?
Yeah, so I believe Steve Chanel, who's one of the talking heads, describes it as a psychological battle in the show, and you can see early in episodes 1 and 2 that psychological battle. You get a little bit of a more behind the scenes sort of discussion about when Wout van Aert smashed his bottle on the ground at the end of stage 2, and you can sort of see Adam Yates and Pogacar joking about that. You really get inside UAE, and there's a big contrast. Andre Hauptmann, who's the sort of top dog at UAE for Pogacar, he's very calm on the radio, very sort of cool, calm and collected. But then you see sort of Jumbo-Visma cutthroat, shouting, sort of more ruthless in their communication style, and the team seems a lot more tense. That might be the editing style. It might just be the way that they've been portrayed in the show, but UAE does seem a little bit more laid back as a whole. And it is interesting to have the sort of the dichotomy between the two portrayed, because in that first one we didn't get into UAE at all. So this one you do really get to see those two riders. And also as well, on the flip side of it, when Vingegaard eventually attacks and completely wipes out Pogacar on the Col de la Loze, you get the insight into how Pogacar's feeling. And you can sort of see him sort of reliving that grief, but he's kind of like, well, these things happen. I'm human after all. I can't be there every single day. Sometimes you have off days, and I think that was quite sort of human of him to do so.
Yeah, and it's the age wrist injury I brought into it as well.
Yeah, so the first episode is sort of, it sets the pathos for a lot of the writers. It's sort of we have a sort of wasted 20 minutes of following Richard Carapaz because we have this whole bit where we go to Carapaz and see him training. Vorter's just like, yeah, we've risked so much for Richard. He's the most expensive signing we've ever had. Blah blah blah. And then you see him crash on stage 1, and then you go to the hospital with him as well and find out that he's broken, whatever. And your heart bleeds for Carapaz, but he's not he's not mentioned at all in the rest of the season.
I mean, I bleeds more for Vorter's, not for Carapaz. Vorter's whole budget just went down the sink.
And what also is touched on is the investment side of it as well. Like Walters talks about investment side and how he had to sort of convince people to pump the money into the team, and how it's hard to convince them when you don't have your leader at the Tour de France, and as well into the Age d'Isère episodes, because we follow Ben O'Connor and Felix Gall in Age d'Isère. O'Connor was really the team leader going into that race. Gall was kind of an accident, and O'Connor was he goes through this big ride of emotions throughout the series. At the beginning, he seems really frustrated. He's annoyed on stage 5 that the team handed the victory to Hindley, because they worked with Hindley in the breakaway to get Felix Gall the stage win. It didn't happen in the end, but they were quite close, and Gall jumped up the GC in the process. But you see, like, the team are unhappy with O'Connor. They're like, the sponsors can't justify paying this much for a guy who can't deliver. And you see that sort of business side of the racing more than you did in Series 1. But it's definitely a step up. I think as a whole, it's very good. And you don't have to watch Series 1 to watch Series 2. I think they're kind of separate entities as a whole.